The next hadith that we need to focus on from the series of 40 hadiths compiled by al-Tamimi is related to the concept of prejudice. So what is prejudice? Prejudice has a few different meanings. If you want to look at the dictionary meaning and the way in which we're going to talk about today, this is the preconceived opinion that a person has that isn't based on their reason, it isn't based on intellect or any experience which they have. It means to have a dislike, or to have hostility, or to have unjust behavior, which is derived from any preconceived opinion or negative opinion that you have about someone or something. And this prejudice which a person has in their hearts can lead to all types of different sins. It can lead to jealousy, it can lead to racism, it can lead to nationalism, or it can even lead, on the other hand, to treating people unfairly, or even to the extent of oppressing people. And this is all based on preconceived feelings that a person has which are untrue, they are unfounded, and they are not based on any real experience which this person has, otherwise they would not have them in the first place. So they are baseless and unfounded feelings. Now the hadith which is mentioned in regards to this disease of the soul is as follows. So Shaykh al-Farani reports from Imam Sa'd alayhi salam that the Holy Prophet had said, whoever possesses in his heart a sabir or prejudice in any of its forms, such as tribalism, racism or nationalism, even to the extent that this is as small as a mustard seed, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise him on the day of resurrection with the pagan Bedouins of the age of Jahiliyyah, which is the time from before Islam, the time of ignorance. Prior to the spread of Islam, prior to the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being spread throughout Arabia, the Arabs were known to be a tribal society. They had very strong feelings of prejudice in their hearts towards not just their own groups, but to people from other groups outside of their tribes. And when Islam came, what it did was it challenged this prejudice and this prejudicial spirit which these people had in their hearts. And it declared that dividing human beings and dividing communities and societies into different tribes, into different races, into different ethnic groups, this had only been willed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to allow people to recognize one another more readily, in order to establish that yes, there are different groups of people, but not to give a sense of superiority to one group over another group based on skin, based on ethnicity, based on gender. This is because in the eyes and in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is an individual's virtue, it is an individual's piety, an individual's good deeds which divide him and divide other people's as being superior to one another. And according to one of the narrations from the Holy Prophet, he had said, O mankind, all of you are from Adam, and Adam was created from the earth. So there is no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab, except through the virtue of piety, of being fearing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what superiority in the Islamic sense means. It does not mean that someone from one country or one race is superior to another person, except when that person fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more. It is also related that, for example, in the Battle of Uhud, one of the Muslim soldiers was from Persian origin. He was from the Persian Empire. And when he was attacking one of the kuffar enemy, he said out loud, here is my sword and I am a Persian. And what the Holy Prophet did in this situation was that he felt that this statement could motivate nationalism in the rest of the fighters, and they would start to become proud of being Arabs, or they would be proud to be Persian. So he warned this individual, this Muslim soldier, right away to cease these statements, to not make statements based on superiority of one's race, and instead take pride in his religion and say that you are proud to be of the Muslims rather than to be of the Arabs or the Persians. So what really is prejudice? We have a dictionary definition, but when we look at it from the Islamic context, what do we mean? The Islamic perspective from the eyes and the words of the ulama who described it. For example, Imam Kumayl, when he says that this type of prejudice is an inner psychic quality which is manifested in beginning to patronize people and to declare superiority over them, and to defend people who this person has a feeling of affection, this feeling of love towards, whether this be from their religious creed, their religious group that they belong to, or their ideology when it comes to politics, or even whether it comes comes to the land in which they were brought up in. To put it very simply, prejudice in the eyes of Islam is the feeling that a person has of superiority to another person, or to look down on another person based on either the religious group they belong to, or the race they belong to, or the tribe they belong to. And feeling that this person is superior because they belong to this race, they belong to this group. Now, this feeling of prejudice that people have within their hearts, unfortunately, as all the other hadiths we have mentioned from this series of hadiths, is a disease of the soul, and it is a sin. And it begins to bring about a lot more moral and behavioural deviations in a person, and it leads on to much more and many more sins which a person may delve into. And in fact, in Islam, as we know, is a very condemnable quality. For a person to have prejudice in his heart, as the narration we mentioned earlier on says, the person who has this mustard seed of prejudice in his heart is condemned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, there needs to be the topic of intention, which is raised when we discuss prejudice. When a person, for example, supports his people and he supports his friends, if he does this purely for the sake of upholding justice and upholding the truth and upholding righteousness and what is correct, and to stand against injustice, then this is commendable. Even though these people are from his side, he is not defending them for any other reason than that it is correct to stand up for what they are fighting for. This is because supporting the truth, supporting the justice is not only wajib and obligatory on every Muslim, but it is one of the best human qualities, and this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages people to stand up for the truth wherever they find it. And this is also of the attributes of the prophets of God and his awliya. Its sign is that a person should support the party or support the group or individuals who are on the side of truth, who are on the side of justice, even though this may consist of people who you relate to. For example, if there is a person in your society or in your community and there is a great deal of evil going on around you, and this is being done by people you know, people you are friends with. For example, in a mosque, there may be some haram practices which go around. If, for example, one person stands up and says this is wrong, you should be the one who takes his side. You need to stand up for that truth and that justice. And the person who does this is someone who is a defender of the truth. He is a lover of the truth. And he will be counted amongst the champions of society, not only in this world, but in the afterlife as well, being judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, Allah judges that person and deems him to be a rightful citizen of this earth. And he begins to see him as a wholesome and valuable member of a community and member of a society. And if a person is selfish and their tribal instincts begin to override them and they cause them to defend the sins of people who they belong to, then this person is inflicted with the sin of prejudice. This person is a corrupt member of society, and he corrupts it by confusing sins with virtue. And he stands on the same page as the Bedouins in the time of Jahiliyyah stood. They were a group of Arab people who inhabited the desert before the advent, before the introduction of Islam, in the era of darkness, and as Jahiliyyah means, the age of ignorance. Now, according to one of the narrations and the hadiths by Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish 6 groups of people for 6 different kinds of sins, and some of them we have mentioned already. The first one is he will punish the Arabs for the prejudice they had. Meaning what? The prejudice that some Arabs have in their hearts that they are superior to other races. The next people who will be punished are the peasants for having pride. And then there will be the rulers and the tyrants for their oppression. And then there will be the jurisprudence for the jealousy and the envy which they have. And then there will be the merchants and the sellers for any dishonesty which they have. And then the people of the villages for the ignorance that they have. Now, from the hadith and from the narrations from the Ahlul Bayt, we can see that this evil of prejudice is one of the more fatal sins, which results not only in an evil life in this world, but in a harsh and severe punishment in the hereafter. And in fact, it can drive a man from outside of the folds of Islam into the path of kufr. And it is one of the horrible and abominable traits which we can find from Shaitan himself. In the book Al-Kafi, through one of the chain of authentic narrators, it is reported from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam that the Holy Prophet of Islam has said that the person who exerts or shows prejudice, or the one on whose behalf this is exerted, then the tie of faith is taken from his neck. He uses a tie in this example. If you have a tie, imagine this is your religion and you wear it tight around you and it protects you and it shows that you're of the religious people. When you begin to have this feeling of prejudice in your heart, this tie begins to be taken off you. And so your closeness to Islam, your closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets pulled apart and you leave that faith, you leave that deen. This person as a result becomes abandoned, they become hopeless. This thing which they clung on to in this life thinking that it will benefit them, in reality brings them nothing except emptiness and loneliness. And another hadith to mention in this regard is from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, who is reported to have said, whoever practices prejudice against someone, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall wrap around him a fold of fire. This is the punishment which a person has for holding prejudice against another person in their hearts. Obviously, from these statements, what you can see is that to be a Muslim, you have to be free and you have to get rid of any prejudice within you. This is one of the clear and obvious statements from any of these narrations which you can read. Someone can say that I am a Muslim and they can say I belong to Islam and they can claim to have Iman. Only when they are submissive to the truth and when they are humble in front of it can they truly accept this status or this title. This person can only be a true Muslim when he deems that his own aims, his own purposes, his own goals, no matter how big or great they may be, no matter how trivial or transitory they may be, no matter how big or small, before the aims of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he needs to accept this. And this person should be free from all traces of ignorance, from all traces of prejudice. Because if not, his face will turn away from the right path. The thick curtains of ignorance and prejudice will begin to obstruct his vision, and anything which he seeks to do in this life will be blocked. When he is called to administer justice and speak the words of truth in society, he will put his foot on the head of what is right. And if there is a clash between, for example, the Islamic prejudice and the prejudice which is instilled in a person by shaitan, then he sides on the side of Jahiliyyah. He sides with ignorance. And he gives precedence instead to Islamic prejudice and his prejudice for the truth. This is what he should be seeking to go towards. If you want to put it into a real life practical example, you can look at the Shia community themselves. For example, if we want to take Muharram or any actions which are done which are not specifically from the Shia throughout the year, whether that's Muharram or any time, some people will say, why are you conducting such an action if it is not from Islam? And what the person who has prejudice in his heart will say is that this is from what we believe in, and this is what we have been brought up with, and this is our culture, and you cannot stop us from doing this. In reality, what that person has when they say that is they have prejudice in their heart. What they mean is that what their fathers and what their grandfathers and what their friends did, they adopt. And they view it as true Islam. Why? Not because it's true Islam actually, but because it's what they've seen from society. And because it's from their own people, they accept it as truth. But do these people not pay attention to the Holy Quran? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, and when it is revealed to them, follow what Allah has revealed, they say rather we will follow what we saw our forefathers doing before us. Even though their fathers understood nothing, nor were they guided. This is what the Quran is saying. It's an instruction not to follow what we see from our societies, what we see from our communities, rather solely to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained to be the righteous path. And this is the essence of what we are talking about. We need to remove any traces of ignorance, any traces of prejudice, and submit only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the great martyrs which we have, Malcolm X, he said in the past in relation to this, that Islam, the religion of the Islam, is the one religion on this world that erases from society the problem of race or racism. He says, I have never seen before sincere and true brotherhood practiced by every single person irrespective of their colour other than in Islam. Islam is the one religion which removes prejudice in all its essence. There is no racism, there is no tribalism, there is no superiority over one gender over the other. Why? Because the Quran states very clearly that the person who is most superior is the one who is best in good deeds and the best in faith. So what is the cure for prejudice, or for the person who may have prejudice? As you know, it's a dangerous condition, not only for the person himself, but for society, because when he has this prejudice, it reveals itself in his actions as well, and affects other people. So one must think very seriously and must reflect and ponder about the consequences of what this prejudice may have, not only in this world, but for him in the hereafter, in the akhirah. If you love or if you hate someone, or if you support or are against a group of individuals, think about what has motivated you to be on that side. Think about whether you are doing it for pure intentions or whether you are following a crowd in doing so. If it is for a reason other than for promoting truth and for siding on the side which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on, or if you are standing on that side to help the oppressed or to prevent aggression and tyranny, then you should give up any of the support which you have for the people who you may side with out of prejudice. And it is difficult for a person to take this step and to give up love or friendship or family relations in order to side on this correct side. However, your decision to give up blind prejudice will bring about a lot of benefits for you spiritually. Not only this, but it will save you from the fire of hell, which the narrations we mentioned indicate will happen. A person will be bound by folds of flames which will engulf them. And not only this, but it will help others to do the same and to get rid of this prejudice. And I want to conclude with a narration of a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has said that the one who calls towards prejudice is not from among us. The one who fights for prejudice is not from us. And the one who dies from prejudice is not from us either. And as always, I ask you to pray for Palestine and to pray for Gaza and to grant victory to the mu'mineen and to the mujahideen there. But tonight I want to make a special dua for the shuhada of the Hajj al-Sha'bi, who were massacred 2 days ago in the most brutal way by the Americans. How can I sit on this platform and stay silent in regards to what happened there? These men who got killed, these men who got slain, they are your brothers, they are your sons, they are your fathers. These people were bombed in the night under the cowardly guise of darkness by the enemies who have killed 1 million Iraqis from amongst you. These men are the ones who saved the Haram. These men are the ones who protected your families by being taken captive by Daesh. These men are the ones who protected and saved the stability of Allah. And they preserved its people, and they preserved its sanctities. And for them we are grateful. And to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we are grateful that our families are alive because of the sacrifices of these men. And as Sayyid Sistani says, forget what I say. As for what Sayyid Sistani says, he says, we should not forget the merit of the Hajj al-Sha'bi. And it is haram and not permissible for someone to speak even one word which detracts away from the value of their massive sacrifices. So we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we congratulate those martyrs who rose to paradise to be with their Lord. Namely, the martyr Mujahid Tariq Ali Hassan al-Daraji, the martyr Mujahid Muhammad Father Jasim al-Gharawi, the martyr Mujahid Ali Nasir al-Ka'bi, the martyr Mujahid Salih Zubayr al-Sa'di, the martyr Mujahid Haydar Tariq al-Rabayli, the martyr Mujahid Salih Mahdi Abdul Rasul al-Shahmani, the martyr Mujahid Murtada Jabir Isa al-Qatrani, and the martyr Mujahid Muhammad Jabir Haddad al-Duwayhid. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant patience and ease to the families of these martyrs, and to cover their souls with His mercy, and to grant recovery to all of the wounded who were cut into pieces by these evil bombs of the enemies of Islam. So please recite Surah Al-Fatiha for the martyrs after Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.